Images of Venice. Paintings by Tintoretto. Observations by Jean-Paul Sartre. From the tiny islands of the lagoon, Venice rose up on 1,000 stilts to become a world power, a trading center between East and West. Fortunes were made here which attracted, amongst others, artists from all over the world. Jacopo Robusti, known as Tintoretto because his father was a dyer, was born in Venice in 1518. He died there in 1594 at the age of 76. Tintoretto was one of the most important representatives of Venetian classicism. His passion is painting. Most of his major works are housed in the Scuola di San Rocco. The building was commissioned by the Brotherhood of San Rocco, a society of prosperous citizens dedicated to prayer and devotion, to charitable works, as well as, no doubt, to business. Between 1564 and 1587, Tintoretto produces 50 paintings for the Scuola di San Rocco, based on stories from the Old and New Testaments. In doing so, he gave to the city of Venice a powerful body of work, worthy of comparison with the work carried out by his contemporary Michelangelo in the Sistine Chapel in Rome. Jean-Paul Sartre returned again and again to Tintoretto and devoted a number of sympathetic texts to him. On the very first page of his book, What is Literature?, he writes of Tintoretto's crucifixion, painted in the year 1565.
Tintoretto did not choose the yellow gash in the sky above Golgotha in order to depict fear or even to evoke it. This gash is both fear and yellow sky at once.
Visitors to the Scuola cannot fully appreciate Tintoretto's painted ceilings. In order to do so, it is necessary to have spotlights and modern photographic techniques. With the aid of these, the painter's obsession becomes immediately clear. There can be no doubt that Tintoretto wants to express something beyond the content of the picture. Sartre's writing on Tintoretto consists only of fragments. One of these fragments is The Prisoner of Venice, a title Sartre had intended for a larger work, parts of which appeared in Les Tombes Modernes and L'Oblique. The obsession of the 16th century painter finds an expert interpreter in the 20th century philosopher. In Tintoretto, Sartre recognizes a kindred spirit. As we shall see, Tintoretto is always wrestling with gravity in his paintings, the force which in classical mechanics holds the world together. To demonstrate this, we need another camera, which can move easily back and forth from one part of a picture to another. Tintoretto is, of course, extremely skilled at staging biblical stories, but we today see something different in these mythological scenes. Our perceptual habits are different from those of the 16th century members of the Brotherhood of San Rocco. They wanted to see their own faith and generosity represented in religious paintings, combined with gold ornamentation as a symbol of their power. Today, we see Tintoretto as a free artist who managed to meet the conditions set by his contemporaries while at the same time courageously asserting his personal vision.
Art, without losing its representational character, becomes, in the hands of Tintoretto and his contemporary Michelangelo, a powerful means of individual expression. Tintoretto invents insubordination.
In 1548, Jacopo Robusti, known as Tintoretto, gives the first public demonstration of his rebelliousness. He is 30 years old and has already been working on his own account for 10 years. He must have been accepted into the guild as a master at an astonishingly early age. In 16th century Venice, painting was subject to the laws of a market completely dominated by the unchallenged king of painters, Titian.
Today, art is a trade in pictures. Then it was a trade in painters. The buyers examined them, chose the master they wanted, and took him off to their church, their scuola, or their palazzo. As a painter, you had to sell yourself, get yourself noticed, just like film directors today. And you had to accept every script you were offered. Everything was agreed in a contract. The subject of the work, the number and choice of the figures, often even their poses, as well as the size of the canvas. And in addition, there were other restrictions based on religious tradition or contemporary taste. The customers had their whims, like the obstinate film producers of today. They would suddenly have an idea, and then at a word from them, everything had to be redone.
In these circumstances, the contract for the Scuola di San Marco was of the utmost importance to the young Tintoretto.
The prescribed subject. A Christian slave is tortured by infidels. Heaven is outraged, and St. Mark plunges headlong through the ether, vertically down onto the scene of the crime, 100,000 fathoms from the stars, and shatters the instruments of death in the hands of the torturers. The surprise of the bystanders must be depicted. The naked slave must be male. The crowd must wear turbans. The saint, according to taste. Number of people, between 25 and 30. Required dimensions, 4 meters 15 centimeters by 5 meters 40 centimeters. Tintoretto locks himself in, gets down to work, follows his instructions to the letter, and causes the most incredible scandal.
At first sight, the composition follows the classical style of which Titian is the master. It has balance, symmetry, a neoclassic background, first-class treatment and execution. And yet, taken together, these qualities turn the established order on its head.
Has anyone ever seen a saint flinging himself down to earth like that?
Jacopo Robusti had found a quite extraordinary way of staging the script he was given. Let us first observe the crowd, and follow Sartre's text at the same time.
The witnesses of this miracle are disturbingly ambiguous. Is not the crowd both something archetypal, making its own rules, and the product of playful chance? Robusti wants to paint real people with real bodies. The result, a crush. These solid figures jostle each other, but do not merge. Above all else, the Venetians value form, indivisible beauty. They notice the lack of order in the crush of figures and the loneliness in the crowd.
The painter shares this loneliness. He paints himself among the onlookers. Let us turn from the crowd to the figure of the saint. Here too, Tintoretto breaks with convention.
That's supposed to be a saint? Isn't it a plummeting body? Sitting at God's right hand, Mark hears a voice calling him. He jumps off his perch and surrenders himself to gravity. Until this fateful year, the illustrious patron saint of Venice had been accustomed to send only images of himself down to earth. Now, without any warning, he changes his habits and sets off in person. To make matters worse, all this fuss not to console a doge or prop up an ailing king, but simply to rescue a slave.
In the Venice of 1548, nothing is allowed to stand in the way of the unity of religion, tradition, and the regime. The paintings of the time depict an order which allocates heaven to the saints, angels, and spiritual phenomena, while earth is allocated to man and material objects. When the saints intervene to help man in his wretchedness, they send a redeeming spirit, which can only be seen by looking up at the sky. In this case, despite his physical presence, the saint is not noticed by the other participants in this drama.
Will he hit the ground and be smashed to pieces? Of course not. He is a saint after all. And yet the only basis for this optimism is faith. We would like to believe that his fall will be halted by a giant break a few fathoms from the ground. But, break or no break, the fall goes on. It can only be stopped by destroying the picture. You want proof? If Mark were to hover, the cloak would be wrapped around him.
Let us turn to the slave. Again, the established order is turned upside down. The mindless slave, who exhibits not the slightest reaction to his peculiar fate, exudes an aura of light.
The saint, in contrast, appears to us as a dark mass with weight and density of its own. The rays of sunlight do not penetrate him. I know he has a halo, but this bit of phosphorescence is an end in itself and illuminates nothing. It is only a piece of decorative headwear. In this confrontation between heaven and earth, the night must fall from the sky while the day must rise from the earth. A fall and a shadow. Two ways of showing us gravity in all its indifference. The deeper intention of the painter becomes partially clear. With the courage of a man of the people, he wants to show us a privileged being without its privileges. Or to put it another way, in the moment of truth. There can be no doubt that in Tintoretto's time this would have been seen as an act of subversion. Even today, it can be dangerous to expose the powerful.
The ruling class of Venice goes on the defensive. Some members of the Brotherhood furiously attack the painting. None of them are prepared to defend it. The painter, deeply upset, returns the picture to his studio. The writer Pietro Aretino, an authority on matters of taste, is impressed by the young painter's technique and defends him against the Philistines. In a letter, he compliments Tintoretto. How alive it looks, how real. You'd never think it was painted. This verdict gives the painting respectability, and the outrage begins to subside. In the end, the picture is housed in the Scuola di San Marco. Robusti has been made aware of the danger his genius can bring. Had he not, from one day to the next, fallen from favor and nearly become unemployed? Venice is not ready for a revolution, not even in painting. A strange relationship begins to develop between the painter and his native city. Jacopo Robusti becomes Tintoretto, whom Sartre calls the prisoner of Venice. Since the end of the 15th century, Venice has recruited its most important painters from the mainland, the terra firma. Giorgione is from Castelfranco, Titian from Pieve di Cadore. Paolo Cagliari, known as Veronese, comes from Verona, and Andrea Schiavone is from Zara. In the eyes of Tintoretto, born in the craftsman's quarter of the city itself, these are foreign invaders. He remains loyal to it all his life, paints it with passion again and again, and finally dies in it. Venice, in its very essence, defies the laws of gravity. The clatter of steps echoing down the tiny streets leaves no doubt that man is a creature of the earth. Yet, gliding along the canals, it is possible to feel free of the constraints of gravity. At the same time, the walls of the buildings in this monument of a city show signs that Venice is slowly sinking. But still the city can hide its affliction and maintain the illusion of elegantly floating on the water. Venetian society reflects the state of the city. It too is threatened with decline.
At this time, the population of Venice comprised 7,600 patricians, 13,600 burghers, 127,000 craftsmen, laborers and traders, 1,500 Jews, 12,900 domestic servants, and 550 beggars.
The bourgeoisie has no way of determining its own fate. There's nothing to stop a member of the middle classes from accumulating wealth, but you have to be born a patrician to have a share in the power of the state. This bourgeoisie has yet to develop class consciousness, but it is aware of its impotence in the face of a visibly declining aristocracy. For the first time, after centuries of power and prosperity, city and state are in danger. In 1453, the Turks take Constantinople. In treaty after treaty, Venice is forced to surrender its possessions in the eastern Mediterranean to the Ottomans. The galleys of the infidels make the Mediterranean unsafe. In 1492, Christopher Columbus discovers, for the Spanish crown, the first traces of the New World in the Caribbean. The discovery of the route to India results in the collapse of trade with the Levant. South American gold pushes prices up enormously and causes economic chaos. Venice's significance among the European powers dwindles. The city-state seeks to arrest this decline by a show of grandeur and unparalleled high living.
beauty seems indestructible. Its sacred image protects us. So long as it remains among us, the catastrophe will not occur. This is the case in Venice. The city begins to fear collapsing into the slime of its lagoons. It imagines it can escape through beauty, its unique grace. It claims to make life buoys and pontoons of its palaces and its frescoes.
Titian is the painter of beauty. His whole work exudes the order and unshakable balance of the privileged world. The sublime backgrounds and the well-ordered figures in Titian's paintings produce precisely the impression that Venetian society would like to give of itself. But Tintoretto, who was born in this seething city, experiences the people's unrest at first hand. He has breathed the Venetian anxiety all his life. It obsesses him. It is all he can paint. Gripped by the same sense of unrest, he feels compelled to depict a reality which differs from that desired by Venetian society. And he paints this reality without it being immediately obvious. He has learned in the meantime that the people of Venice are blind when it comes to themselves. And so he conceals his anxiety in luscious visions a la Titian.
If we compare the presentation of the Virgin with Titian's painting of the same subject, it becomes immediately clear that Jacopo and his contemporaries were worlds apart, and that the distance between them was increasing all the time. For Titian, it is quite simple. These stones have no weight, not even the weight of theatrical scenery. And so he paints the staircase into the picture, ascending step by step from left to right. Let me make myself quite clear. I'm not saying that these steps are light. I'm saying that these steps have nothing at all to do with weight. It follows that to go up these steps is easy. It demands no physical effort. There are stations on the way, pauses for meditation. And seen from afar, the ascending figures suggest the elevation of the soul at prayer. Jacopo wants to paint a flight of steps and shows us the Matterhorn. Fearing that we might not fully appreciate the difficulties and dangers involved in the ascent, he positions right at the foot of the mountain a matron who gives us more detailed information. She appears to be speaking to her child, pointing out the Virgin. How beautiful that good little child is. But her powerful, outstretched arm becomes a signpost. That's where you have to go, up there, to the top, right to the top, and even further, and then you will find happiness.
If we cover up 2/3 of the painting and look only at the remaining third, then we can see the participants of the story. Only they are weightless.
Everything becomes lighter and takes its place in the order of things. Tintoretto blinds us with a composition in the style of Titian and simultaneously exploits our admiration to communicate his personal concern.
Thus, Sartre makes us aware of Tintoretto's strategy. In order to satisfy his patrons, the painter uses the same techniques as Titian in the heart of the painting. Venice cannot lavish favor on two so very different painters at once. So it honors Titian, who constantly manages to amaze the city while at the same time reassuring it. Tintoretto it recognizes only with reservations. It finds him perturbing. A visit to the graves which Venice provided for the two painters makes this abundantly clear. Titian is buried in the Basilica I Frari, after San Marco, the city's most important church. The solemn monument, designed for Titian by Canova and executed by students of his in the 19th century, reflects the great esteem in which the 16th century artistic genius is held by all visitors. This monument is Venice's tribute to the king of painters, the creator of the magnificent Assumption of the Madonna. Here there is perfect harmony between man, the saints, and God, and the conception of the eternally beautiful city is perfectly realized. At the same time, it is Venice's tribute to the painter who so skillfully manages to create a link between the ruling aristocracy and the spiritual world. The Madonna of the House of Pesaro shows the victorious General Jacopo Pesaro and his family at an audience granted them by the Virgin Mary, in the presence of Saints Francis, Anthony, and Peter. If its rulers have connections like these, then the city has nothing to fear. To the mortal remains of Tintoretto, Venice grants only a simple flagstone in the church of Madonna dell'Orto. It is the parish church of the quarter in which the painter spent the last years of his life. No extravagance for the dyer's son from the Rialto, just a Latin inscription and the austerity of this mighty church. What are the paintings that guard the painter's grave? Among others, there is an adoration of the golden calf and a last judgment, both by the master himself. Two huge and powerful works whose proportions express all the despair of Tintoretto the man. Sartre has this to say on the Last Judgment.
An avalanche of marvelous yet expressionless naked figures. This is hell. Who can deny that this fall will last forever? Who can maintain that the end is in sight? Of course, this mythical river, this Styx, this Acheron, has been dragged forcibly into the picture. The whole business ends with a footbath. But apart from that, what happens to them? Nothing. It is an everlasting crush. Toads and their holes. I notice that the damned are falling of their own accord. They have not been touched by the finger of God. All creation will fall if left to its own weight. Now, let us look at the chosen ones. They do not appear proud. The punishment of their fellow men makes them dizzy. They too are heavy, but they do not fall because they have been taken care of. A cloud of tarred canvas is pushed under their feet. They are supported, held firm. If one of them should be so careless as to fall in spite of this, he will be caught by winged athletes. Mankind is handicapped by his own weight. Was this perhaps a source of suffering for the painter? He certainly seems to see in this general characteristic of the animal world a particular curse for the human race.
Heaven is equally inaccessible to mortals in the adoration of the golden calf. To get there, even Moses has to transform himself into a spirit, while the earthly sinners are crushed under the weight of the idol they have created.
Painting is his profession and the only language he has. He loves it passionately.
And Venice, in spite of all its reservations, cannot escape this passion, this frenzy. The city demands a great many pictures from its painters. Tintoretto meets this demand with a vengeance.
Let him be. He'll cover every wall in the city with his paintings. No campo is too large, no sotto portico too dark for him to decorate. He will paint the ceilings. Passers-by will walk over his beautiful pictures. His brush will not stop at the palaces on the Grand Canal, nor at the gondolas, perhaps not even at the gondoliers. This man believes he acquired at birth the prerogative to transform his native city into himself. And in a way, he's right.
He acquires this house around 1575, and in it he sets up his studio. From it a stream of pictures pours out into the town. His daughter, Marietta, his son-in-law, Caser, his sons, Domenico and Mario, all have to help with this exhausting work.
He wants to paint, endlessly paint. He wants to sell, crush his rivals by the number and size of his canvases. There is something desperate in this forcing. Until his death, Robusti works against the clock, and we cannot determine whether he is trying to find himself in work or escape himself in overwork.
Tintoretto works off his frenzy of creation within the framework of supply and demand. His treatment of his rivals is disgraceful.
Tintoretto is like lightning. He sails under the Jolly Roger a pirate to whom all means are justified. He prefers to hit below the belt. Generous when generosity pays, he lowers his eyes, refuses to name his price, and repeats like a hypocrite, "Whatever you like." Or else he offers his work at cost price in order to win a contract. One bad deal can lead to other better deals. When no one wants his canvases, he gives them away.
Don Fusaro, vicar of San Rocco, describes how Tintoretto used a cunning strategy to obtain a great commission.
Una storia un po' originale, interessantissima.
This is a true story. It happened in May 1564.
Questa meravigliosa scuola, edificio impareggiato.
This splendid schola, dedicated to art and faith, begun in 1516 by Bartolomeo Bon, continued by Santi Lombardo and completed by Scrapanino, was to be decorated.
Di essere ornata. Allora, l'Arciconfraternita Scuola Grande di
The assembled Brotherhood of San Rocco announced a competition, calling on the best painters in Venice to submit sketches for the decoration of this wonderful room.
queste splendide sale. Si presentarono
Among the competitors were Jacopo Robusti, known as Tintoretto, Paolo Cagliari, known as Veronese, Antonio Salviati, Andrea Schiavone, and Il Succaro.
Il Tiziano aveva cercato.
Titian did not take part.
Il tema era questo. In 28 giorni gli artisti
The rules of the competition required that the painters submit, within 28 days, a sketch for a work depicting the glory of San Rocco, which would fit into the oval in the ceiling.
un tema. Schizzo, disegno di San Rocco in gloria da inserire in questo ovale. Il 31 maggio
On May the 31st, 1564, the committee assembled to judge the works.
dei lavori si presentano il Veronesi, col suo
Veronese
lavoro
came with his sketch,
si presenta
so did Il Zuccaro, Andrea Schiavone, and Antonio Salviati.
il nostro
Finally, it is the turn of our friend Jacopo Tintoretto.
il quale cosa fa?
And what does he do?
Invece che fare
Instead of a sketch, he has produced a completely finished painting.
e allora dice la
He says to the committee,
io non perdo
"I don't waste my time on sketches, I paint my pictures straight onto the canvas."
subito.
The committee is astonished and asks, "So where is your painting?"
Nella notte
During the previous night, Tintoretto, with the help of a few friends, had fitted it into the oval and hidden it by a cover, to which were attached 2 cords.
legato a 2 corde. E quando la commissione
When the committee asked to see the picture, Tintoretto himself pulled first one cord and then the other, so that the cover fell away, to reveal his bold picture of San Rocco in glory, with God the Father awaiting him, surrounded by angels and bathed in light.
mentre l'Eterno Padre lo aspetta in cielo circondato gli angeli, tra fulgori di luce e di colore. Incantata la
The
commissione.
committee was taken completely by surprise and didn't know what to decide.
Allora il Tintoretto
Upon which Tintoretto said,
fuori concorso.
"I know that my work does not fit the terms of the competition. I want to donate it to the scholar.
Non potete negarlo.
Your statutes oblige you to accept such a gift."
Si fece alzare,
He was then hoisted up to the ceiling and wrote around the oval, "Painted and donated by Jacopo Robusti, known as Tintoretto, May the 31st, 1564.
31 maggio 1564.
It was a clever move, as the devious Tintoretto well knew. The statutes of the Brotherhood made it impossible for a pious donation to be refused. They had no alternative but to enter the event in the records of the Scuola. Today, the undersigned, Jacopo Tintoretto, painter, donated a painting to us. He demands no payment, undertakes to complete the work if necessary, and declares himself satisfied with this arrangement. For his part, the undersigned wrote, "I, Jacopo Tintoretto, painter, am satisfied and agree to the above." Satisfied, I should think so too. Tintoretto's gift causes panic among his competitors and throws the Scuola open to him. It places the endless empty walls at the mercy of his brush, and last but not least, it brings him a pension of 100 ducats a year.
And so we owe one of the gems of European art to a well-timed gift. Tintoretto sets about painting the huge surfaces on his own. Not even his pupils are allowed into the building. The Scuola di San Rocco is entirely the work of Tintoretto.
Scarpe adesso sono grande, non li vedo più, vedete? Così, metti. È entrata la grande, non li può vedere.
Hai visto sotto?
Anche se non li fotografava prima, perché ogni volta che veniva a fare, l'ho fotografato tutti i gattini.
Ma cosa che mangia, cosa che lo portare, va bene? Sai cosa che
To look at these huge paintings is to encounter again and again Jacopo Robusti, Venetian painter, painter of Venice. He does not paint canals and bridges, but the world he knows best, the world in which he was born, the Rialto of artisans, laborers and burghers.
Tintoretto is a manual laborer who introduces into his work the savage force which opposes all human effort. Even if this force is conquered, it does not leave the painter or his work in peace.
And this manual laborer, this somber believer, as Sartre puts it, who regards matter as the only absolute, attacks us with this matter and with his attempt to make both contrast and depth visible. "50 years after the death of Tintoretto, we discover from the historian Ridolfi how the painter used to prepare his compositions. He would make little figurines out of wax or clay, which he would cover with scraps of material, making sure that these emphasized the movement of the individual limbs. Sometimes he would put them in little houses or set them in perspective. Then he would place small lights at the windows in order to observe the play of light and shadow. Or else he would hang the little models from the ceiling and study the effect they made when viewed from below. In this way, he could work out the foreshortening necessary for his ceiling paintings. This confrontation with matter explains the violent nature of his painting and the seemingly unfinished impression it gives. But this violence finds expression only in the technical aspects of his paintings. The Scuola allows us a glimpse into another dimension of his being, where there is nothing spectacularly cruel. In The Massacre of the Innocents, Tintoretto does not show us a bloodbath, just as he does not show us the torment of the damned in The Last Judgment. Instead, we see, as Sartre rightly observes, panic among women. Today we know that Venice, at the beginning of the 16th century, was extremely receptive to the ideas of the Reformation. Hundreds of printing presses suddenly sprang up, spreading new ideas which Rome tried to suppress. All levels of society suddenly had access to a literature which, by the standards of the time, can only be described as subversive. This included not only the Bible in the vernacular, but also Il Fioretto della Biblia, a compendium of stories from the Old and New Testament and parts of the Apocrypha. Can we not see traces of these forbidden texts in the paintings on the walls and ceiling of the Saloni Maggiori in the Scuola di San Rocco? Sartre, faced with the astonishing ascension, goes even so far as to speak of Tintoretto as a heretic. Nowhere else does the risen Christ need assistance to return to the kingdom of his Father. Here he seems handicapped by his human weight. To leave this world, he needs the help of strong angels. Sartre wonders,
are they carrying a God who has only become God again through death?
At this time, doubts about the undivided divinity of Christ could lead to the stake. Did not Veronese have to face the Inquisition to answer the charge of profaning biblical themes? Perhaps it is even possible to discover in the Scuola paintings traces of the doctrines of the Anabaptists. The missionaries of this Protestant left were certainly well received by the artisans of the Rialto. They predicted the end of the world, preached nonviolence, advocated an egalitarian society, and based their attempted renewal of the true church on the compulsory baptism of adults. Is the baptism of Christ a pretext for communicating some of these forbidden ideas? And when Tintoretto stages his masterpiece, the Crucifixion, is he not transmitting to the viewer something of his social pessimism, when rich and poor, good and evil, are subjected to the same bodily weight, the same light, the same fear which spreads over the earth, the yellow gash?